Welcome to Vote and Voice. Today we're going to talk about political culture. Let's be honest, when you hear the words political culture, your brain probably tries to go into sleep mode. It sounds like a dusty textbook from a 101 course you skipped in college. The thing about political culture, it is the most matrix thing in your life. It's the invincible code running in the background of every argument you have at Thanksgiving, every tweet that makes your blood boil, and every reason why some countries thrive while others fall apart. Today we're going deep. We're looking at the ghosts in the machine. This is the software society. So, part one is the hardware versus the software. So, think about this. You can fly to a country that's struggling, hand them a perfect letter-bound copy of the US Constitution, build them a shiny parliament building, and buy them the best voting machines money can buy. That's a political system. That's the hardware. But if that country's culture, which is the software, is built on a history of tribal warfare or a deep-seated belief that the guy in charge always steals, end quote, those shiny voting machines are going to end up as boat anchors. The system is what we say we do, and the culture is what we actually believe is possible. And this is why institutions fail, because you can't run democracy 2.0 or on authoritarian OS. It just crashes. So part two, the vibe check. So the trust, authority, and the I versus the we. So what's in this code? It's a cocktail of things we take for granted. First, there's trust. Question yourself, do you look at government building and think that's where the services are or that's where the thieves live? Then there's views on authority. In some places, the leader is a public servant, literally a guy you'd see at a grocery store, and others. The leader is a big man, a king adjacent figure who isn't to be questioned. Then you've got this eternal wrestling match, individualism versus collectivism. In the US, the culture is obsessed with the I, my rights, my property, my hustle. But in places like Japan or Scandinavia, it's more about the we is the priority. So neither is wrong, but they create totally different words with individualist and collectivist. And let's talk about the rule of law. In a healthy political culture, the law is a ceiling that protects everyone. And in a toxic one where it's like more like abuse of power, the law is a weapon used to crush your enemies while you and your friends ignore it. When corruption becomes normal, it's not a policy failure, it's more like a cultural riot. Part three. So, are you a player or a spectator? So, back in the day, researchers broke us down into three groups. One is the parochials. You don't know who the mayor is and you don't care. You're just trying to survive. Two is the second is the subjects. You know the government exists, but you're passive. You follow the rules because you're scared or because that's just how it is. You're in a passenger seat with no steering wheel. And three is the participants. You're in the driver's seat. You vote, you yell, you organize. The dream is the civic culture where we're all participants, but we actually trust the car not to explode. But look around. Does it feel like we're in a civic culture right now? Or does it feel like the car is doing 90 miles per hour toward a cliff? Part four, the American glitch, polarization and the echo chamber. So let's talk about the American brand. Because for a long time it was built on healthy suspicion of centralized power. Don't trend on me. Free speech or capitalism. But lately, that suspicion has mutated into extreme polarization. We aren't just arguing about tax rates anymore. We're arguing more about reality. And you think that and thank the black mirror in your pocket for that. Social media has turned our political culture into a series of echo chambers. We don't talk to neighbors, we talk to algorithms that feed us exactly what makes us angry. This has created a massive generational gap. Boomers might still trust the mighty nightly news, but Gen Z sees the TikTok of protests and trusts that more than the government press release. The information diet has changed, and it's making our culture more fragmented than ever. Part five. So the socialization, how you got brainwashed. Sort of. You weren't born with your political views, you were programmed. It started at the dinner table with family, and then it continued in the classroom through education, and it was reinforced by your religion or your peer groups. But then there were the core memories, major political events. For some, it was the Cold War. For others, it was 9/11. For the current generation, it was the 2008 financial crisis and the pandemic. So these aren't just news stories, they are the scars on the political culture as they change our expectations of what the government can and should do for us. And six, institutions versus the unwritten rules. Here's the scary part. Democracy doesn't die because someone tears up the Constitution. It dies because the informal norms, the unwritten rules wither away. Things like the peaceful transfer of power or not calling your opponent a traitor aren't in the logbooks. They are cultural habits. If we stop believing in the idea of a fair right, the rules don't matter. And a constitution is just a piece of paper if the people holding it don't respect the unwritten expectations. So, seven is the money factor, inequality, and populism. So we can't ignore the wallet because when economic inequality gets too high, the political culture turns sour. Economic anxiety is the ultimate fuel for populism. And when people feel like the system is a rigged game, they don't want a participant culture anymore. They want a wrecking ball culture, like rioting. They look for a leader who promises to burn the house down because they don't feel like they own a room in it anymore. So last but not least, the final thought, like, are we driving or being driven? As I close this out, I want you to think about this. Is our culture driving the polarization, or is the polarization killing our culture? Can we fix a culture once it's broken and make change, good change? Most importantly, does the media affect and reflect who we are, or is it designing who we've become? So political culture matters more than ideology, and you can change your mind about a tax bill in 5 minutes, but changing a culture takes a lifetime. As we are the ones who write this code every single day with how we treat each other and what we demand from our leaders. The long-term stability that our world doesn't depend on who wins the next election. It depends on whether we still have a culture that can survive the result. Thank you for listening to Vote and Voice in the booth with me. Stay skeptical, stay engaged, and I'll catch you next time.